In this lecture, we will look at examples of tidal barrage type power generating stations. This slide lists the 5 largest tidal barrage generating stations in the world. The last 2 are experimental facilities. So we'll look at the first 3, which are producing power commercially. Starting with the first, the Lake Siwa Tidal Power Station in Korea was opened relatively recently in 2011. It has a total installed capacity of 254 megawatts and is a very interesting system in that it only generates power on the flood tide. So normally if you choose to generate only on one tide, you would use the ebb tide, but this one generates only on the flood tide. And that is related to its history. It was actually constructed, there was actually a predecessor there in constructed in 1994, an artificial lake. And the artificial lake, in fact, created some environmental issues. And so the tidal power station was viewed not only as a source of power, but a possible solution to the environmental issues. And the generation on flood tide is related to that issue. The system spills water on the ebb tide to turn over the water flow. So that system is a bit of an anomaly, and for that reason I'll focus on the second and third plants, which have a long history of operation. So they're the largest database basically on tidal power barrage plants. 1966 for the French plant and 1984 for the Canadian plant. So let's go first to France and the Laurence Tidal Power Plant. This nice overall aerial view shows the tidal barrage installed here. So this is the seaside, and this is the tidal estuary, the tidal basin, which is essentially, it's located at the mouth of the Rance River. So this is using a tidal estuary as opposed to damming a bay. The view shows some features here. So there's, in the tidal barrage here, you can see at the left hand side a lock for boat passage. And then you can also see the powerhouse, this segment here, and you can see wakes coming from the turbines. So this suggests that right at this moment it's in the flood mode of operation, higher water level on the seaside, and it's flooding the basin. Okay, so some more features. The site construction started in 1960. The construction on the plant itself in 1963. This was a massive construction project. They had to build caissons to essentially create a dry space to erect all this structure. And it was finally commissioned in 1966 and connected to the grid in 1967. Some of the references listed at the end of the slides have details about this construction project, which was really remarkable. So the barrage, this actually spanned the entire mouth of the river, 750 meters, and the power plant portion is about half of that. We saw in the aerial view the lock for boat passage, and this photo shows the powerhouse. So these indents here represent access to the turbines. So the overall tidal basin is quite large at 22.5 square kilometers. There are 24 turbines installed, each with a peak rating of 10 megawatts for a total of 240 megawatts capacity. We saw previously that the power output depends on the head available to drive the turbine. So the 10 megawatt rating is at 7 meters head, and that gets down rated to 8 at 5 meters head and 3 at 3 meters head. Now these turbines are unique in that they have reversible blades, so they act in both the ebb and flood mode, tides, and the motors can also be the generators can also be reversed to act as motors so that they can pump water as well. So in one mode of operation, the tidal barrage can actually be used as an energy storage system, so you can store water for use at a different time of the day, to generate power at a different time of the day. So this image shows a model of the powerhouse and turbine left over from the construction time. There's a video which gives a quick scan of the area. So let's talk about the results from this tidal barrage system. The annual energy output, certainly on the basis of many years of operation, is about 600 million kilowatt hours. So about 68 megawatts average power output. So if we take the nameplate rating for this, we get a capacity factor of 28.3%, which is pretty much in line with some other types of renewable energy projects. The cost was quite high originally, essentially 124.5 million US dollars in 1966. But because it's operated now for so many years, the original cost has been completely covered. And so now the only cost of operation, the operation and maintenance costs are the cost of the power produced. And so the published value is 1.8 US cents per kilowatt hours now, which is remarkably cheap. So environmental impact. At the time the plant was constructed, I think it's fair to say that not enough consideration was given to the environmental impact. And indeed, the construction technology created huge change. So as I mentioned, there were caissons put in place essentially to isolate the bay, the river mouth, and lots of change happened. So species moved in and took over that weren't normally there, like sand eels, and the estuary silted. So lots and lots of change. Now after the thing was in operation, and now that it's been in operation many years, the original fish, sea bass and cuttlefish, have returned, and the invasive species have disappeared. But certainly it took a long time to recover some kind of equilibrium. So the good news is that it's returned to a sustainable condition. The bad news is that there was considerable impact when it was first constructed. So let's go across the Atlantic now to Nova Scotia. So this map shows the site of the Annapolis Royal Tidal Power Plant. So here's the Bay of Fundy, the site of the world's highest tidal ranges. We'll talk in a future lecture about tidal current power plants considered for the Minas Strait, which is up here. But our current focus is on the Annapolis Basin. So that's this tiny little body of water here connected to the Bay of Fundy by a narrow passageway. And the tidal power plant is located at the northeast end of that. So let's look at the next map. You can see from this aerial view, this is the Annapolis Basin right in here. The Annapolis River winds its way up to the northeast, and the tidal power plant is installed right here. So it's not in the Bay of Fundy itself, it interacts with the Annapolis Basin. So the Annapolis Royal Tidal Power Plant, the construction started in 1980, and one thing that made it more economical was that essentially the barrage was already in place. If you go back to the previous slide, you can see that you have to drive a long way to get around the Annapolis Basin, and so there was a causeway already in place for that purpose, for a highway, and so that was used for the tidal power station. So the operation began in 1984. Excuse me. And the Nova Scotia Power has a very nice video which describes the overall operation of the power station. So the characteristics for this tidal power plant, it has at this location in the Annapolis River Basin, it has a 6.5 meter tidal range on average, and this one operates completely as a single effect ebb flow system. So it only collects the ebb tide, so that makes it really simple. The turbine only acts in one direction, so the water enters the basin through a sluice gate, which is a larger structure, and then actually can flow through the turbine, but there's no power generation when it runs backward, when the water flows backwards. So that during the flood tide, the water enters the basin, and then once a sufficient head is achieved in the basin, the turbine starts to generate electricity and generates for 6 to 6.5 hours each tide, so 12 to 13 hours each day. So that's a pretty good result. The Annapolis Royal Power Station uses a stray flow or rim generator turbine. At the time of its installation, it was a new type of turbine, and it was less expensive design, but was unproven at the time. And so there was as a pilot program, only one turbine was installed, even though the basin has capacity for 2 turbines. And indeed, after some relatively minor initial teething issues, the turbine has proven to be quite reliable. But the second turbine has never been installed, so there's only one turbine currently installed. It has 4 blades, a 7.5 meter diameter runner, and a rated output of 17.8 megawatts at 5.5 meter head. It's a very high efficiency turbine at 89.1% at the rated point. Of course, it doesn't always operate at the rated condition, but certainly is a high efficiency design. Now, again, as mentioned, it cannot pump. It's a simple part of the reason for low cost is it does one thing well. It just generates power in one direction. So the daily output of the system is roughly 80 to 100 megawatt hours, depending on the tides. They do vary a bit. And it generates overall about 30 gigawatt hours annually. So that gives us a capacity factor of roughly 17.1%. The final cost of the project when it was all operating in 1985 was 56 million Canadian dollars. There was a bit of an overrun. The estimate was 46 million. And again, there was a pre-existing barrage there, and that's usually the civil works are often the most costly part of the project, and so that did save some money at the time. So the cost per kilowatt hour for generating power has not been reported, but we have methodology to estimate that. So if we use our methodology that's been applied to both wind and wave energy, we know the annual electricity production at 30,000 megawatt hours. We know the capital cost at $56 million. This is Canadian dollars. We know that it's been operating for 30 years. It'll certainly continue to operate for longer. And so we can calculate a capital cost recovery factor. And if we calculate then estimate the cost of power produced, we come up with 13.3 cents Canadian. So at the current time, Canadian dollar is about worth about 88 cents US. So in this particular example, you can see the capital cost really represents the lion's share of the electricity cost. So when the initial cost is all paid off, it will be very inexpensive to operate, about 3.7 cents per kilowatt hour. So environmental impact, there has been some environmental impact, not nearly as significant as the one in France. There has been shoreline erosion, and when the plant first opened, the water level in the tidal basin increased when the first plant was first started up, and so that created some erosion. That erosion has been stabilized, and in fact, as part of their operating procedure now, when the spring runoff comes, when the snow melts, actually reduce the water level in the tidal basin to accommodate that spring melt, and that has helped minimize the erosion. So fish mortality is a big concern. It's an area where fishing and water sports are hugely popular. So there are initially there was a high mortality rate in fish going upstream through the turbine, and so a noise machine was installed to deter the fish from going that route. There's also They can also go through the sluice, so there is a pathway for them to go. One study found that the upstream adult fish population has not changed over the years, but there are other studies that say that the fishway did little to prevent fish mortality. So I think there's still conflict over what the ultimate outcome was. It is also perhaps fair to say that the overall impact may have been minimized by the relatively small size of this installation. At 20 megawatts, it's a much smaller unit than the 240 megawatts that is operating in France. So let's try to summarize our thoughts on tidal barrages. So I think the two examples suggest that although the initial cost is high for construction, they can produce power at reasonable rates over a very long period of time. And I haven't written a bullet for this, but another advantage is that the tides are highly predictable, and so you know when this power is going to be available day in and day out, which makes it fairly useful. It is also possible, as the plant in France does, to use the basin as a bit of a storage element, so you can shift power production a little bit to different times of day. So the overall environmental impact is difficult to assess. Tidal estuaries in particular are very environmentally sensitive areas, and so that's a tough challenge to begin with. With the two examples we have, it appears that although some damage might have been done initially, it appears to at least partially recover over time, which is certainly encouraging. However, overall, it might be very difficult to get a new tidal barrage project through the environmental impact approval process to get a project go-ahead. So certainly in Canada, even though we have a tidal power plant, any new construction being considered for the Bay of Fundy is in fact it's tidal stream generators that are being considered, not any additional tidal barrage systems. So, some questions for your own thought. Can you identify any local or regional sites that have potential for a tidal barrage power generating station? What environmental and practical issues might be problematic at that location?